the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape.
Welcome back, horror fans, to Real Talk, the Horror Edition, the show where we take a deep dive into films that chill you to your core, twist your perception of reality, and linger long after the credits roll. I'm your host, Josh, and if you're like me, there's nothing more fascinating or terrifying than horror that messes with your mind. In this special 3-part series, we're zeroing in on a subgenre that's as unsettling as it is brilliant: psychological horror. Over the next few episodes, we'll explore films that don't just scare you with monsters or gore, but instead burrow deep into your psyche, stoke paranoia, and make you question what's real and what's imagined. These are the films that use atmosphere, character, and subtle terror to reflect the fragility of the human mind, sometimes leaving us more disturbed than we ever thought possible. Today we're kicking off Part 1, Mind Games and Madness, a selection of films that perfectly embody this concept. These are stories where reality twists, mental stability shatters, and sanity teeters on a knife's edge. And what better film to begin this journey than Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, a 1980 masterpiece that has earned its place as one of the most iconic and debated horror films of all time. Based on Stephen King's novel, though famously reimagined by Kubrick, The Shining is not just a horror film. It's an experience. It's the slow unraveling of a family trapped in the isolation of the Overlook Hotel. It's Jack Nicholson's unforgettable descent into madness. It's the chilling whispers of ghosts, the foreboding symmetry of winding hallways, and the creeping dread that something is terribly wrong. Now, whether you've seen The Shining once or 50 times, one thing is certain: it definitely stays with you. There's always something new to notice, some layer of horror you missed before. The more you watch, the more the Overlook Hotel feels alive. Its secrets just out of reach, its influence inescapable. So grab your axes, steer clear of room 237, and follow me into the labyrinth of madness that is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This is Real Talk Horror Edition, and it's time to check in to the Overlook Hotel. I just hope we're ready to face what's waiting for us there. Let's set the stage for one of the most iconic horror films in cinematic history. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, released in 1980. This film has not only cemented its place as a classic, but has also sparked endless debates, theories, and re-examinations. It's a film as enigmatic as the Overlook Hotel itself. Stanley Kubrick, known for his meticulous and visionary style, took Stephen King's novel of the same name and created something very different. While King's book leaned more into the supernatural, Kubrick's version takes a far more ambiguous, psychological approach. The screenplay, co-written by Kubrick and novelist Diane Johnson, strips the story down to its rawest elements: isolation, madness, and the fragility of the human mind. Now let's talk about the cast. Jack Nicholson delivers one of the most unforgettable performances of his career as Jack Torrance, a struggling writer, recovering alcoholic, and family man who slowly descends into violent insanity. You can argue that Nicholson doesn't just play Jack, he becomes him. Shelley Duvall as Wendy brings a vulnerable yet resilient performance to her character, who's often underestimated. And young Danny Lloyd, who plays Danny Torrance, carries an eerie maturity far beyond his years. His portrayal of a boy burdened by visions and a mysterious psychic gift known as The Shining grounds the film's supernatural elements without ever going over the top. The story itself: Jack takes a job as the winter caretaker for the remote and sprawling Overlook Hotel, which, let's be honest, is practically a character in its own right. He moves in with his wife and his son, and as snow traps them in complete isolation, the Overlook begins to reveal its dark history and sinister influence, slowly chipping away at Jack's sanity and exposing the family to psychological torment that is as violent as it is unforgettable. Now, I want to share my own journey with The Shining. I first saw this movie when I was in my early teens, and to be honest, I probably didn't really get it. I approached Jack Nicholson's wild performance and the haunting visuals, but the deeper psychological terror, that went right over my head. It wasn't until one of my multiple revisits as an adult when I could recognize the layers of dread, the subtle storytelling, and that suffocating atmosphere that I realized just how genius this movie truly is. The beauty of The Shining is that it evolves with you as a viewer. On first watch, it's unsettling and strange, like a puzzle you can't quite solve. But every time you return, you notice new details, new symbols, new moments of unease that make you question everything. It's not a film that hands you easy answers. Instead, it lingers, gnawing at you long after it's over. So whether you're watching this for the first time or the 50th, there's always something to unpack. Now, let's break down this film, starting with its themes of mind games madness and blurring the lines between reality and illusion. What sets The Shining apart from so many other horror films is its sheer psychological depth. It doesn't rely on jump scares or gore to terrify its audience. Instead, it digs into the vulnerabilities of the human mind, exploring themes of mental instability, isolation, manipulation, and that fragile line between reality and illusion. Let's break it down. First up, the theme of manipulation, both external and internal. Jack Torrance's descent into this madness is one of the most chilling and tragic elements of the film. When we meet Jack, he's already on shaky ground, a struggling writer, a recovering alcoholic, and a deeply frustrated man who perceived his failures in life as defining him. He's trying to find purpose, but instead of salvation, he finds the Overlook Hotel. And here's where things get interesting, because the hotel feels like it's alive, doesn't it? It's a sentient force digging into Jack's insecurities and darkest impulses, whispering to him, manipulating him like a puppet. Think about the infamous all work and no play scene when Wendy discovers the typewriter pages filled with the same chilling sentence over and over. It's not just a man cracking under pressure. It's the results of a slow, insidious erosion of Jack's mind. The Overlook exploits his weaknesses, his pride, his temper, and his addictive tendencies, until there's nothing left of the man he used to be. Jack doesn't just lose his mind, he's pushed into madness, and watching that process unfold is absolutely terrifying. Perception versus reality? Now let's talk about one of the most disorienting aspects of the film, and it's the constant blurring of perception and reality. Kubrick is a master at creating ambiguity, and in The Shining, Nothing is ever fully explained. Are the visions real? Are they ghosts? Or are they hallucinations brought on by Jack's unraveling psyche? When Jack sees Delbert Grady, the former caretaker who supposedly murdered his family, are we witnessing something supernatural? Or is this all in Jack's mind? This lack of clarity is what makes The Shining so unnerving. As viewers, we're never given solid ground to stand on. We're constantly second-guessing what's real, just like Jack. And the genius of Kubrick's direction is that he doesn't spoon-feed the answers. Instead, he forces us to sit with the uncertainty. That sense of disorientation mirrors Jack's crumbling grip on reality, and it pulls us deeper into the psychological horror. And now we can't talk about The Shining without talking about Jack Nicholson's performance as Jack Torrance. Nicholson is absolutely electric here, teetering between charm, menace, and outright insanity. At the start, Jack feels like a man who's trying to be a good husband, trying to do his job, just trying to escape his demons. But as the Overlook tightens its grip, you see him transform. The transformation from a seemingly ordinary man into a deranged, axe-wielding monster is both fascinating and deeply disturbing. And what makes it even scarier is that Nicholson enjoys the madness. You can see it in the glint of his eye, the twisted smile, the unhinged energy he brings to every scene. But let's not overlook Wendy Torrance, played so brilliantly by Shelley Duvall. Wendy is often criticized as being weak or passive, but I don't think that's a fair assessment. Wendy's fear, her desperation, that's what makes her so human. She's trapped in an unimaginable situation, trying to protect her son, while watching the man she loves spiral into violence. Her growing terror reflects the chaos Jack brings into their lives. And let's be real, Shelley Duvall's performance is harrowing. Her reactions feel raw and real because, well, they were. Kubrick famously pushed Duvall to her limits during filming, which adds an unsettling layer of authenticity to her fear. Watching her navigate the psychological nightmare Jack creates is heartbreaking and nerve-wracking in equal measure. And finally, let's talk about the fear of the unknown, because this is where The Shining truly excels. Kubrick fills the hotel with mysteries that cannot be fully explained. The ghostly twins, the haunting visions of blood cascading down the elevator, and of course, the sinister secrets of room 237. These elements are never neatly wrapped up or over-explained, and that makes them very effective. It's this ambiguity that leaves us uneasy because our imaginations fill in the blanks. Think about it. Why is the Overlook haunted? What happened in room 237? Who or what is really controlling Jack? Kubrick doesn't answer these questions, and that makes the film so much scarier. The fear comes from not knowing. It taps into the primal part of our psyche that dreads the unseen, the unexplained, and the unknowable. In The Shining, the horror isn't just in the ghosts or the violence. It's in the way the Overlook feels. It's the overwhelming sense that something is horribly, irreparably wrong, and we may never truly understand what that something is, and that's psychological horror at its finest. And trust me, the more you think about it, the harder it is to shake. If there's one thing Stanley Kubrick has mastered in The Shining, is its atmosphere. This film doesn't just show you horror, it makes you feel it. The overwhelming sense of dread seeps into every frame, And it's all thanks to a masterful combination of visuals, sound, and setting. Kubrick creates an environment so immersive and unsettling that the Overlook Hotel doesn't just serve as a backdrop, it's becoming a character. And let's start talking about the visuals, because this is another place where Kubrick's meticulous eye truly shines. One of the most iconic techniques in The Shining is the use of long, winding tracking shots. You know the ones I'm talking about, like those scenes of Danny riding his tricycle through the endless hallways of the Overlook. The camera glides behind him in a slow, deliberate way that feels a little off. It creates this creeping sensation of being watched, being followed. It's not frantic or chaotic, it's measured, calm, and that makes it even more terrifying. It's like the Overlook itself is stalking him, silently lurking in the background. And then there's Kubrick's obsession with symmetry. Every shot in the Overlook is precise. Hallways that stretch into perfect, unnatural lines. Rooms that are too still, too composed. It feels staged, like a dream or a nightmare where nothing quite fits. The unnatural symmetry of the hotel mirrors, its disturbing powers, everything looks right, but it all feels wrong. It's a subtle way that Kubrick keeps us uneasy, even if we can't really figure it out and put our finger on why. Of course, visuals are only half the story. Kubrick's use of sound in The Shining is just as critical in building its suffocating tone. Let's talk about that score. The music is nightmarish, screeching strings, deep droning hums, and sounds that make your skin crawl. There's no melody, no comfort, just this overwhelming, grating noise that keeps you on edge. It's primal, almost like a physical assault on your senses. Kubrick knew that the sound could evoke emotions even when nothing is happening visually, and he uses it masterfully. But here's the thing. Silence in The Shining is just as effective as the music. Think about the sound of Jack's typewriter. That hollow, repetitive click, clack, clack echoes through the Overlook like a heartbeat. A cold, mechanical pulse that grows louder and more ominous with each passing scene. The emptiness of the hotel amplifies everything. Footsteps echo just a little too long. The wind howls from outside. The silence becomes deafening, almost unbearable, until the tiniest sound feels like a jump scare. And then there's the setting, the Overlook Hotel itself. If you want the perfect setting for psychological horror, it doesn't get any better or worse than this. The Overlook is massive and isolated, a sprawling labyrinth in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by snowdrifts that trap its occupants inside. It's a prison without bars, and the vast emptiness of it all starts to close in on the characters. But the real brilliance lies in how Kubrick makes the hotel feel alive. It's not just the ghosts or the supernatural elements. It's the spaces. The hallways feel endless, like they might swallow you whole. The maze outside mirrors the labyrinth inside, both physically and metaphorically. Jack's descent into madness mirrors his inability to escape this place. And let's not forget the history embedded in the Overlook, the ballroom, the blood-drenched elevator, the cryptic references to "you've always been the caretaker." There's this overwhelming sense that the Overlook has seen horrors before, and Jack is just the latest victim. It's a place stained by violence, haunted not just by spirits, but by the madness it breeds. Kubrick turns the Overlook into a psychological playground, an environment so cold, so vast, and so wrong that it feels like a monster itself. It's beautiful and disturbing in equal measure, which is exactly what makes it unforgettable. In The Shining, atmosphere is not just a tool, it's the entire experience. The visuals, the sound, and the setting come together to create a tone that seeps into your bones. Kubrick doesn't let you escape, just like he doesn't let his characters escape. And that's why the film stays with you. The Overlook may not let you leave, and may never let you go. When we think of The Shining, the imagery and atmosphere tend to steal the spotlight. But what makes the film truly unforgettable is its characters. Each of them bring a different emotional weight to the story, and their roles are crucial in how the psychological horror unfolds. Starting with Jack Torrance, as we mentioned, played to perfection by Jack Nicholson. Jack is at first glance a man trying to pull himself back together. The recovering alcoholic, struggling writer, and father looking for a fresh start. But Kubrick makes it clear early on that something isn't quite right. Jack is on edge from the very beginning. Whether it's subtle irritability with his family, or a simmering sense of frustration about his failures. The brilliance of Nicholson's performance is how he allows Jack's flaws to gradually unravel. The Overlook doesn't possess Jack in the traditional sense. It exploits him. The hotel latches onto his weaknesses, his resentment toward Wendy, his unspoken disappointment in Danny, and his deep frustration with himself. Jack doesn't snap all at once. It's slow, methodical. Each unsettling interaction with the ghosts, like Lloyd the bartender or Grady in the bathroom, chips away at his sanity. By the time we get to All Work and No Play Makes Jack a Dull Boy, Jack has become a vessel for something darker than himself. And what's terrifying is that Jack feels inevitable. He starts as a man with cracks, but by the end, those cracks shatter. Kubrick strips away his humanity until there's nothing left but a brutal, violent monster. That final shot of him, frozen in the snow, grinning, reminds us that Jack didn't just lose his mind. He lost himself. And here's where The Shining takes a chilling turn. Who or what is the real villain of the story? On one hand, Jack becomes the film's physical antagonist, but is he to blame? Or is the Overlook itself the true malevolent force? Kubrick never gives us an easy answer, and that ambiguity is what makes it so unsettling. The hotel's psychological hold on Jack is terrifying because it's invisible. We never see a ghost physically harm anyone. Instead, it manipulates Jack into doing its dirty work. The Overlook feels sentient, like a predator lurking just out of sight. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It plays on Jack's mind, feeding him delusions of grandeur while pushing him further into madness. And that's scarier than any typical horror villain because it's intangible. How do you fight something that isn't there? The hotel traps Jack as much as it traps the audience, and that makes it a far more insidious antagonist than any monster you can see. Now let's talk about Danny, played by Danny Lloyd. Danny is this film's beacon of innocence, but also its most perceptive character. He's the first to sense the Overlook's evil because of his psychic gift, The Shining. This ability allows him to see what others can't, and it turns him into the film's moral compass. The visions he experiences, like the twins in the hallway or the blood-filled elevator, are horrifying, not just because of their imagery, but because we see them through a child's eyes. Danny isn't just afraid. He's paralyzed by the knowledge of what's coming. His silence becomes part of the tension. But Danny isn't helpless. His resilience is the key to the story. While Jack succumbs to the Overlook's influence, Danny fights against it. His connection with Halloran, another character with The Shining, gives him hope. It's Danny's will to survive, to escape, that ultimately saves Wendy and himself. And then there's Wendy. Shelley Duvall's portrayal is heartbreaking, raw, and often overlooked in discussions about the film. Wendy is a character caught between two horrors: the crumbling mental state of her husband and the malevolence of the Overlook. What makes her performance stand out is how human it feels. She's terrified, but also fiercely protective of Danny. Wendy's desperation to save her son drives her to endure Jack's unraveling and ultimately fight back. What's interesting is how Kubrick frames Wendy's fear. It's visceral, it's messy. She's not some action hero fighting off an attacker. She's a mother trying to survive in the face of overwhelming terror. And Shelley Duvall managed to capture that perfectly. Her screams, her trembling hands as she swings the bat, those moments are real, not polished. And that's what makes her performance so haunting. Wendy may not get as much attention as Jack or Danny, but she's the heart of the story, the one who endures it all and refuses to let the Overlook win. The Shining's characters are unforgettable because they're layered, flawed, and human. Jack's descent, Wendy's resilience, and Danny's perception all come together to create a film that feels disturbingly real. Kubrick doesn't give us heroes or villains in the traditional sense. He gives us people, and that's what makes the horror so effective. The Shining is an intricate web of symbolism and subtext, where nearly every visual and narrative choice has deeper layers of meaning. Kubrick uses recurring imagery and psychological themes to explore fractured identities, repressed trauma, and social commentary. So let's break that down a little. One of the most striking symbolic elements in The Shining is Kubrick's use of mirrors. Mirrors often represent self-reflection, but here they symbolize fractured identities. Jack's interactions with the ghost of the Overlook Hotel, like the pivotal conversation with Lloyd in the Gold Room, only happen when he's looking into a mirror. This isn't a coincidence. It visually reflects Jack's descent into madness, where his sense of self fractures and the line between reality and delusion blurs. The mirrors suggest that Jack is not just being haunted by external forces, but also by parts of himself he refuses to confront. Jack's slow unraveling can also be seen as a deeper exploration of repressed violence and generational trauma. The Overlook Hotel isn't just a setting, it becomes the character, a manifestation of Jack's inner demons. The more time Jack spends in the Overlook, the more he succumbs to its influence. But is the hotel manipulating Jack, or is it simply amplifying the darkness that was already within him? Kubrick blurs these lines intentionally. The hotel, with its eerie history of violence, mirrors Jack's struggles, making it both a literal and symbolic space for his descent. Beyond personal psychology, The Shining carries an undercurrent of social critique. Kubrick subtly comments on themes of isolation and the dangers of unchecked masculinity. Jack represents a patriarchal figure, but he's a failure as a husband and father. His frustration and insecurities fuel his rage, turning him into a destructive force. The Overlook becomes a pressure cooker for these failures, magnifying Jack's inability to cope. It's not just a story about one man's breakdown. It's also a warning about the fragile traditional roles in a family. and the harm that toxic masculinity can cause when left unchecked. Kubrick's mastery lies in his ability to layer all of these elements, mirrors, trauma, and social critique into a cohesive narrative. The Shining isn't just a horror film, it's a psychological exploration and a critique of broader societal issues. And that's what keeps us analyzing it decade after decade. One of the most defining aspects of The Shining is its pacing and plot structure. This is a slow burn in the truest sense, and that's precisely where its brilliance lies. Kubrick masterfully builds tension, letting it simmer scene by scene, moment by moment, until it finally boils over in unforgettable ways. Unlike many horror films that rely on jump scares or relentless action, The Shining takes its time, and that deliberate pacing makes the payoff all the more intense. As we watch Jack turn into this madness, every quiet moment feels heavy with dread. Each small argument, each lingering shot of the empty halls of the Overlook Hotel adds another layer to the unease. By the time Jack bursts through the door with his iconic "Here's Johnny" line, the tension has reached its peak. It feels inevitable, like a train you've been watching slowly approach, but you still flinch when it crashes. And what makes The Shining so captivating is its balance between subtle foreshadowing and unexpected twists. Take Room 237, for example. It's one of the film's most chilling and enigmatic elements. When Danny is drawn to the room, and later when Jack enters it, we accept some kind of resolution, maybe an explanation for the supernatural occurrences. Instead, Kubrick offers us an unsettling image and more questions than answers. The moment with the woman in the bathtub shocks us, but it doesn't clarify anything. Is she real? A hallucination? The ambiguity keeps the psychological horror intact, forcing the audience to grapple with what's real and what's not, just like the characters have to do. And then there's the ending. Jack's frozen death in the maze might seem like the climax, but the real impact comes in the final moments, when the camera lingers on a photograph from 1921, showing Jack among the hotel's guests. It's a twist that raises far more questions than it answers. Has Jack always been part of the Overlook? Is he trapped there forever? Or was this fate inevitable? Kubrick leaves us no concrete explanation, and that's what makes it so haunting. The ending doesn't tie things up neatly. It's something that lingers in your mind, replaying over and over as you try to piece it together. So the slow pacing, the cryptic twists, and the open-ended conclusion all work together to make The Shining an unforgettable experience. It's not just a story you watch, it's one you unravel long after the credits roll. When The Shining was first released in 1980, it wasn't the instant classic we know today. In fact, it received mixed reviews from critics. Some dismissed it as overly slow and inaccessible, while others criticized it for deviating too much from Stephen King's novel. Even King himself was famously unhappy with the adaptation. But over the years, The Shining has undergone a remarkable transformation in the public perception and cemented its status as one of the greatest psychological horror films of all time. What sets The Shining apart is its staying power. It didn't just redefine psychological horror, it redefined filmmaking itself. Directors like Ari Aster and Jordan Peele openly credit Kubrick's meticulous craftsmanship as a major influence on their own work. The film's use of unsettling silence, long tracking shots, and haunting imagery has become the gold standard for the genre. The iconic visuals like the blood cascading from the elevator or the labyrinthine Overlook corridors have been referenced, parodied, and reimagined countless times in everything from TV shows to music videos and other films. Even beyond horror, filmmakers in other genres admire and emulate The Shining. The psychological depth Kubrick brings to Jack, his descent into madness, has influenced countless character-driven dramas and thrillers. This is a movie that transcends its genre, proving that horror can be just as artistic, just as thought-provoking, and just as enduring as any other form of cinema. And then there's the cultural impact. Who hasn't heard the line, "Here's Johnny"? It's because it's so deeply ingrained in pop culture that even people who haven't seen the movie recognize it. The Overlook Hotel itself has entered the lexicon of iconic fictional locations, standing alongside places like the Bates Motel or even the Death Star. Kubrick's perfectionism also inspired debates about the film's hidden meanings. Entire documentaries, like the film Room 237, have been made about the supposed subtext in The Shining. Is it about Native American genocide? The Holocaust? Is it Kubrick's confession to faking the moon landing? These theories, however far-fetched, speak to the enduring fascination people have with this film. It's a testament to how much there is to unpack within its layers. Now, 40 plus years later, The Shining is more than just a movie. It is now a landmark in cinema history. Its influence can be felt in modern horror, in the way we analyze a film for hidden meanings, and the very idea that horror can be deeply psychological and artistic experience. It didn't just change the way we tell scary stories. It changed the way we think about the films themselves. Let's wrap up with some final thoughts. For me, The Shining is more than just a film. This is an experience. It's a masterclass in psychological horror. A movie that doesn't just scare you in the moment, but lingers with you long after the credits roll. Its atmosphere, its ambiguity, and Jack Nicholson's unforgettable performance combine to create a film that is as chilling as it is iconic. From the moment we see the Torrance family driving up that winding road to the Overlook Hotel, we're drawn into a world that feels off, unsettling, and suffocating. Kubrick doesn't rely on cheap scares or gore. Instead, he builds a sense of dread that grows methodically, keeping us on the edge for the entire runtime. This is a film that invites you to think, question, and feel uneasy in the best possible way. The film's strengths are undeniable. First and foremost, the visuals. Kubrick's meticulous attention to detail results in some of the most haunting imagery ever put to screen. The symmetrical framing, the unsettling long tracking shots, and the iconic set pieces like the river of blood flowing from the elevator are etched into cinema history. Then there's the music, the score with its eerie strings and unsettling tones. It doesn't just accompany the scenes, it heightens them, amplifying the tension, and the unease is almost unbearable. And finally, the unrelenting tension. Every scene feels purposeful, building toward a climax that is as chaotic and terrifying as it is inevitable. Even in the quiet moments, the film doesn't let you relax, and that's a testament to Kubrick's skill as a storyteller. That said, The Shining isn't for everyone. Some viewers might struggle with its deliberate pacing. It's not a fast-moving horror film with constant action or jump scares. It's slow, methodical, and more interested in psychological tension than traditional thrills. Another potential drawback is the ambiguity. If you're the kind of viewer who likes clear answers and tidy resolutions, this movie might frustrate you. Kubrick isn't going to give you what the story is and its meaning. Instead, he's going to leave room for interpretation, and that can be both a strength and a challenge. For me, though, The Shining is nothing short of a masterpiece. I give it a solid 10 out of 10. It's not just a great psychological horror film, it's a great film, period. If you're a fan of the genre, this is an absolute must-watch. And if you've already seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it again. Every time you revisit The Shining, you'll notice something new, a detail in the background, a subtle line delivery, or a hidden layer of meaning. That's what makes it timeless. It's a film that keeps giving long after your first viewing. So whether you're experiencing The Shining for the first time or the 50th, this is a film that will continue to captivate, terrify, and inspire. It is a true masterpiece of psychological horror. And that's going to wrap up today's episode of Real Talk Horror Edition. We've taken our first deep dive into psychological horror with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, dissecting its atmosphere, characters, symbolism, and legacy. This is a film that continues to captivate audiences, and I hope today's dissection gave you some fresh perspectives, or maybe just inspired you to watch it again. But don't think we're done exploring psychological madness just yet. In our next episode, we'll be diving into Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan, another mind-bending journey into obsession, identity, and the high price of perfection. If you thought The Shining was intense, you won't want to miss this one. In the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on The Shining? Do you agree with my take, or do you have your own theories about the film's deeper meanings? Hit us up on social media, we're on Threads and Instagram. We're at Real Talk. We love reading your comments. And hey, if you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It helps us keep bringing you deep dives into the films you love, or love to debate. And until next time, stay spooky, my friends. Keep exploring the darker corners of cinema, and remember, the best stories are the ones that stay with you long after the credit roll.
Creeping through the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape. Shadows play a twisted game. Fear and terror stake their claim. Footsteps follow close behind. Haunting thoughts invade your mind. Run away, but they won't go. In the darkness, fear will grow. Midnight shadows come to play. In your dreams, they'll always stay. Windows rattle, doors they creak. Ghostly whispers start to speak. Every corner hides a fear. Close your eyes, they're drawing near. Candles flicker, spirits call. In the night they'll take it all. Midnight strikes, the clocks rewind. Nightmares now are intertwined. They'll away, but they won't go. In the darkness, fear will grow. Midnight shadows come to play. In your dreams, they'll